Hello, and welcome to a calm journey through time. Tonight, we will drift slowly through a decade that shaped America, the 1920s, a time of contrasts, of hope and struggle, of music and machinery, of ordinary lives and extraordinary wealth. Before we begin, softly, gently. If you enjoy this peaceful exploration, consider liking this video, leaving a calm comment about what fascinates you most, and subscribing so we may wander together, slowly, through history, at the pace of thought, at the rhythm of sleep. Tonight, we will explore 5 chapters, each a quiet story of the decade. First, the dawn of the 1920s. We will wander through the streets and fields of a nation recovering from war, feel the pulse of cities, hear the first whispers of jazz, glimpse the shadow of Prohibition, and sense the excitement and unease that marked the beginning of this transformative decade. Daily life of ordinary Americans. We will visit cramped tenements in New York City, where immigrant families struggled, walk across quiet farms in Iowa, where the Model T Ford began to change life, and linger in small-town Pennsylvania, where radios and movies wove a shared culture, experiencing the rhythms of daily life, its quiet joys and persistent challenges. Lives of the wealthy elite. We will step gently into the gilded mansions, into rooms of soft laughter and whispered conversations, witness the excitement of stock market optimism, the rituals of social life, the privileges, and the hidden inequalities, seeing life from a perspective both removed and intertwined with the rest of the nation. After that, the transportation and communication revolution. We will travel with the hum of trains, the gentle roar of automobiles, and the first airplanes cutting across the skies, feel the subtle ways radio and cinema created connections, and watch as America became physically and culturally more interconnected than ever before. Finally, the eve of the Great Depression, we will observe the quiet anxiety spreading across all classes, the subtle warning signs of economic instability, and reflect on how the 1920s, with all its freedom and innovation, laid the foundation for both hope and hardship in the decades to follow. So now, make yourself comfortable, let your body sink into the softness of your bed, let your thoughts drift, and allow the gentle currents of history to guide you softly, slowly, into the story of the 1920s. To begin, the first light of the 1920s arrived quietly, softly, as if the world itself were taking a long, deep breath. The Great War had ended a few years before, leaving behind cities scarred, families unsettled, and a nation longing for peace and normalcy. The streets of America were slowly waking, stretching from the narrow alleys of bustling cities to the wide, open plains of the heartland. In New York, the city pulsed with the soft rhythms of recovery. Trolleys clattered along steel rails, the faint hiss of coal smoke drifted from factory chimneys, and the distant wail of a train carried across the river. Immigrant families rose early, the scent of bread and coffee mingling with the lingering chill of dawn. Mothers gently nudged children awake, their hands calloused but tender. Fathers prepared for long days at factories and docks, stepping into the familiar hum of labor. Life was hard, yet full of subtle beauty. The city itself seemed to breathe along with its inhabitants. The narrow tenements, stacked like bricks in a vast mosaic, held stories of struggle and perseverance. Rooms crowded with families were alive with quiet rituals. Breakfasts shared in dimly lit kitchens, whispered conversations over the clatter of dishes, small gestures of care and kindness, unnoticed by many, yet forming the invisible threads that kept communities bound. Children's laughter echoed softly against brick walls, blending with the faint strains of music carried from a distant street corner. Across the countryside, the rhythm was different, slower, steadier, the sun spilling golden light over fields ready for spring planting. The air smelled of earth and dew, of animals and growing crops. Farmers rose with the sun, their movements deliberate, strong, hands roughened by years of toil. Each day was a negotiation with the land itself, a balance of patience and labor. Yet even here, change whispered softly. The distant rumble of automobiles along country roads promised a new era, a quiet shift in the way life would be lived. Prohibition had quietly arrived, the law itself a gentle shadow across cities and towns, restricting, limiting, shaping the choices of ordinary people. Speakeasies, hidden gatherings, whispered transactions, small acts of rebellion, ordinary lives learning to bend, adapt, survive. And yet the human spirit, inventive, patient, persistent, found ways to breathe, to play, to laugh, to live. In the soft evenings, a new sound emerged, the first gentle strains of jazz, drifting from smoky clubs, from open windows, from street corners. A piano's notes carried lightly in the warm night air, a trumpet's sigh following. The music was alive, spontaneous, improvisational. Yet it was gentle, not loud or brash, an invitation to notice the subtle joys of life, the quiet celebrations that existed despite struggle, despite hardship. Even in these early days of the decade, the nation was already weaving together its stories. The crowded tenements, the silent fields, the quiet towns, each place adding its unique rhythm, small, ordinary acts of life blending into a larger, slower, patient story. And as night fell, lamps glowed softly in kitchens and living rooms, the streets grew still, the distant music faded into whispers. Families settled, children drifted toward sleep, and the pulse of the 1920s carried forward, painlessly. The dawn of the 1920s was not marked by headlines or ceremonies, but by these small, persistent rhythms, the quiet awakening of a nation, stretching, breathing, and slowly stepping into the promises of a new decade, waiting patiently for the stories yet to unfold. The city awoke slowly, as if stretching from a long slumber. Streets lined with brick buildings reflected the pale morning sun. Smoke drifted lazily from factory chimneys, and the soft clatter of horse-drawn wagons mingled with the distant roar of early automobiles. Each sound, subtle and patient, became part of the city's heartbeat. In narrow tenement buildings, life stirred quietly. Families rose, gathering around small stoves, sharing meager breakfasts. The aroma of fresh bread, oatmeal, and strong coffee filled the air. Children clutched their worn shoes, mothers adjusted collars and buttons. Fathers tightened ties, prepared lunches, and slipped quietly into the rhythm of labor. There was work to be done, days long and tiring, yet interwoven with moments of tenderness, care, and human connection. The streets outside carried their own stories, vendors calling softly from carts, neighbors greeting each other with gentle smiles, the faint laughter of children skipping stones and puddles. The city was a living organism, its pulse measured not just in industry, but in these quiet interactions. Each step, each whispered word, each soft gesture, forming invisible threads that bound the community together. And everywhere, jazz began to hum its first notes. In smoky clubs tucked between storefronts, pianos whispered melodies, trumpets sighed soft tunes, drummers tapped gentle rhythms. The music spilled into the streets, drifting through open windows, a subtle celebration of life, improvisation, and freedom. It was not loud or aggressive, but intimate, inviting a gentle rebellion against the rigidity of everyday toil. Prohibition cast a soft shadow over this world. The law existed, strict and silent, shaping choices and conversations. Yet human ingenuity persisted, hidden gatherings behind closed doors, whispered exchanges of forbidden beverages, soft laughter in secret corners. People learned to navigate the boundaries of restraint, to bend rules quietly, cleverly, persistently. A delicate balance of caution and delight. In the soft glow of evening, tenements came alive with quieter rituals. Families gathered for modest meals, sharing stories, lessons, and laughter. Children played quietly in corners. Neighbors exchanged small gifts, shared bread, offered advice. The walls of these apartments, thin as they were, echoed with resilience. Every whispered word, every careful movement, every act of care became a note in the city's larger symphony. Even the mundane tasks carried a hidden rhythm. Laundry hanging gently in the breeze, dishes clinking softly in the kitchen, footsteps echoing in narrow halls. Each sound, each motion, a part of the larger pulse of life. And as night deepened, the distant strains of jazz lingered, blending with the city's quiet hum, the clatter of trolleys fading into the distance, lamp light glowing softly through windows, and the city itself seemed to sigh, a slow, patient exhalation. Here, in the ordinary lives of immigrants and working families, in the narrow alleys and bustling streets, the 1920s whispered its first promises, a decade of subtle transformation, of small joys and quiet struggles. The pulse of progress began, not loudly, not forcefully, but gently, persistently, patiently, like the softest breeze rustling the city's many faces. And as sleep settled over the city, as windows glowed and streetlights flickered, families rested, children drifted into dreams, the first threads of change had already begun to weave themselves into the urban tapestry, softly, quietly, and endlessly. Beyond the cities, beyond the clatter of factories and the hum of streetcars, lay the wide, open fields of rural America, rolling plains stretching endlessly under a soft morning sky. The air smelled faintly of earth, dew, and growing crops. The land itself seemed to breathe slowly, steadily, patiently. Farmers rose with the dawn, their movements deliberate, strong, shaped by years of labor and rhythm of the seasons. Hands roughened by plowing, planting, and tending the animals, eyes attentive, gentle, yet full of quiet determination. Each day was a negotiation with the land, a delicate balance between patience and effort. And yet, here too, the subtle stirrings of change could be felt, like a whisper across the fields. Children awoke quietly, tying boots, gathering eggs, helping with chores. Their small hands touched familiar textures, the smooth wood of the barn door, the cool metal of a bucket, the soft fur of a cow. Each motion a lesson in responsibility, patience, and connection to the world around them. Laughter drifted across the fields, mingling with the soft lowing of cattle. The rhythm of life here was slow, deliberate, enduring, yet it was alive, vibrant, full of subtle possibility. And then a distant sound, faint at first, the gentle hum of an engine growing steadily. The Model T Ford had arrived, a small miracle on wheels, a hint of modernity rolling across the familiar dirt roads. Farmers paused to watch, curiosity mingled with cautious excitement. The rumble of the car suggested new journeys, new possibilities, new connections. Suddenly, the world felt a little larger, yet remained intimate, familiar, comforting. Daily life began to shift. Subtly, the car made trips to town shorter, deliveries of goods easier, visits to friends and family more frequent. The Model T became a companion, a gentle tool of progress. Its presence did not disrupt the rhythm of the farm, but extended it, stretching possibilities, opening doors, soft, quiet, patient. Evenings were serene, the sun lowering slowly behind distant hills, painting the sky in muted shades of pink, gold, and lavender. Families gathered for dinner, the clatter of dishes mingling with soft conversations, the faint whinny of a horse outside. The farmhouse glowed with lamplight, quiet rituals of life unfolding, steady, patient, enduring. Sometimes, faint sounds of culture drifted from nearby towns, the first soft strains of jazz or a gentle voice from a radio, connecting rural life to a broader world, threading distant voices into familiar routines. Small, subtle reminders that the nation itself was quietly shifting, evolving. Here, in the open fields and small homes of rural America, life remained rooted in the earth, steady, patient, enduring, yet softly touched by the possibilities of modernity. By the first years of the 1920s, even here, change whispered, gentle, slow, and persistent, weaving new threads into the fabric of everyday life. And as night fell, stars twinkling faintly above, animals settling into the barns, families preparing for sleep, a quiet peace descended over the land, steady, patient, resilient. And in this quiet, ordinary, enduring life, the first soft notes of the 1920s promise could already be heard, whispered across the plains, carried on the wind. Across America, the decade began to weave itself quietly, stretching from the narrow streets of New York, to the open plains of Iowa, to the small, orderly towns of Pennsylvania. Each place carried its own rhythm, its own heartbeat, yet all were subtly connected by the soft threads of a nation waking to change. In the cities, tenements were alive with ordinary lives, the soft murmur of voices, the gentle laughter of children, the quiet steps of neighbors in hallways. Factories hummed their constant rhythm, and beyond the work, music began to seep into everyday life. The first faint strains of jazz drifted out from smoky clubs, pianos whispered melodies, drums tapped quiet rhythms, and trumpets sighed soft tunes into the night. These notes traveled, unnoticed by many, yet shaping the spirit of a generation. Meanwhile, in rural towns, the land remained patient, enduring, steady. Chores were dictated by sun and season. Yet here too, threads of the new culture arrived. The hum of a distant radio, the faint rattle of a passing Model T, or the word of mouth about a popular song from a city. Even in the quietest fields, life felt a gentle pull toward a broader world. A shared rhythm of music, stories, and news began to connect disparate lives, slowly, gently, softly. Prohibition cast its quiet shadow across the nation. City dwellers whispered about speakeasies, rural communities experimented in careful secrecy. The law was strict, yet human ingenuity found ways to bend it. Life learned the delicate balance of restraint and curiosity. Even in ordinary homes, small acts of defiance appeared: the secret sip, the whispered joke, the gentle thrill of bending a rule, subtle, soft, and quiet. 01407044450 middle-class towns became a gentle bridge between urban and rural life. Radios hummed softly in living rooms, families gathered, listening to distant voices, music, and stories. The flicker of a cinema screen carried tales from distant cities. Adventures, romances, and dramas softly illuminating faces and imaginations. Children laughed quietly, sharing whispered conversations about what they had heard. The town absorbed these new threads, weaving them gently into the fabric of ordinary life. Everywhere, life was a mixture of tradition and modernity, of work and subtle play, of routine and quiet excitement. The 1920s did not announce themselves with fanfare, but in small gestures, small sounds, small rhythms that gently threaded the nation together. Families shared meals, children played games, neighbors exchanged greetings, and music, radio, and whispered news carried the pulse of a changing culture, softly, patiently, endlessly. As evening fell, cities, towns, and farms alike settled into quiet calm. The glow of lamplight reflected softly from windows. The distant sound of jazz or a radio program mingled with the rustle of trees or the lowing of cattle. Families gathered, children yawned, voices softened, and the nation seemed to breathe as one. Patiently, steadily, quietly, waiting for the promise and possibilities of the decade to unfold. In this delicate weaving of lives, work and leisure, tradition and progress, struggle and small joys, the 1920s quietly began its gentle transformation, threading every corner of the nation into a slow, meditative rhythm, readying America for the cultural, technological, and social waves that would carry it through the decade, softly, steadily, patiently. The 1920s were quietly arriving in homes across America, softly, patiently, like a breeze brushing through the streets, fields, and towns. The world of ordinary life was slowly opening to subtle new rhythms. The first hum of an automobile along a country road, the faint crackle of a radio in a city living room, the flicker of a film projector illuminating faces in a small town theater. These small marvels carried with them the promise of a broader world. In urban neighborhoods, tenement families went about their days with steady routine. Yet the first advertisements, the colorful window displays, and the occasional glimpse of a new household appliance whispered possibilities of convenience and ease. Even amid struggle, people noticed the hints of a different life, a life connected to distant markets, distant ideas, distant music. The city itself seemed to breathe in this new rhythm. In the countryside, the Model T Ford had quietly changed the pace of life. Farmers found chores that once took hours were now easier. Trips to town, once long and arduous, became a gentle journey. Small errands became excursions. Children watched with fascination, learning that the world could stretch beyond the familiar fields and barns. The automobile, humble yet revolutionary, introduced a quiet sense of freedom, a soft reminder that progress could arrive slowly, without uprooting the familiar. Middle-class towns absorbed these threads of modernity. Radios hummed softly in living rooms. Families gathered to hear music, sports, and news from faraway places. Evenings became quiet celebrations of connection, children discussing songs and stories, neighbors chatting over fences. The cinema provided gentle escapes. Flickering images of romance, adventure, and humor filled the theater with soft light and quiet wonder. A shared culture was emerging, invisible, subtle, gentle, binding towns and cities into a quiet national rhythm. Consumer culture arrived as a whisper, not a roar. Household goods, radios, automobiles, and small luxuries became accessible. For the first time, families across the nation felt part of something larger, a gentle, collective experience. Yet inequality remained quietly present. Some could enjoy these comforts fully, others glimpsed them only from afar. The decade's rhythm was not uniform, but it was persistent, slow, patient, gently drawing the nation into its embrace. Evenings were calm, city streets quieted, the low glow of lamplight reflected softly from windows. Farmhouses settled under starlit skies, towns gathered in gentle anticipation of evening programs on radio or visits to the local theater. Life continued its patient rhythm, steady, enduring, resilient. The hum of modernity, soft and gentle, had begun to pulse through the nation, connecting ordinary lives in subtle, enduring ways. And so, as night fell across America, cities, towns, and farms alike settled into gentle quiet. Families rested, children drifted toward sleep, lamps glowed softly, and the first whispers of modern life lingered in the air, patiently, quietly, endlessly, signaling the slow arrival of a decade that would shape America's culture, technology, and imagination. The dawn of the 1920s settled gently over America, a nation still recovering from the echoes of war. A soft, patient calm hung in the air, the kind of quiet that carries possibilities, and the subtle weight of uncertainty. Across cities, the narrow tenements held the stories of ordinary families, their struggles, their small victories, their quiet joys. The clatter of work in factories, the laughter of children in alleyways, the faint strains of jazz drifting through open windows, all created a gentle rhythm, a rhythm of resilience, patience, and enduring hope. The city, bustling yet intimate, seemed to breathe with the pulse of its people. In the countryside, fields stretched under early morning skies, the earth smelled of growth and toil. Farmers worked patiently, planting, tending, caring, aware that change was approaching softly, like a distant horizon. The Model T Ford had begun to ripple through rural life, introducing new connections, new freedoms, and subtle disruptions. Every journey, every trip to town, every new sound of progress became a quiet reminder that the world was slowly expanding. Small towns absorbed the quiet threads of modernity. Radios whispered distant voices into living rooms. The flicker of cinema screens illuminated faces, imaginations, and dreams. Children learned songs, adults exchanged news, ordinary life intertwined gently with a broader cultural rhythm. Even amidst the steady hum of tradition, the subtle pulse of the new decade could be felt, patiently, persistently, quietly. Prohibition cast a shadow, soft yet present, across cities, farms, and towns. Its rules were strict, yet human ingenuity and quiet rebellion found ways to weave joy and freedom into daily life. Small acts of defiance, secret gatherings, whispered stories, the gentle thrill of bending boundaries, all blended seamlessly with the ordinary rhythms of life. And across the nation, jazz, radio, automobiles, cinema, and subtle consumer goods became threads in a slow, quiet tapestry, connecting ordinary lives across distances, linking streets, farms, and towns into a gentle rhythm of shared experience. The decade's promise was not immediate, it was patient, gradual, unfolding softly in ways both tangible and unseen. Evenings were calm, the glow of lamplight reflected softly in windows, streets quieted, the countryside settled into stillness, children drifted into sleep, families whispered prayers or shared stories, and the nation exhaled, a slow, patient sigh, carrying hope, resilience, and curiosity into the nights, into the days, into the unfolding decade. The 1920s had begun, not with a loud proclamation, but with quiet rhythms, subtle connections, and the gentle pulse of ordinary life. Cities, towns, and farms all breathed together, each story a note in a larger symphony, soft, enduring, endlessly patient, and quietly preparing America for the decade ahead. As the night deepened, as stars glittered above distant fields, town streets, and city rooftops, the nation rested, ready, gently, patiently, for the years of change, growth, and quiet transformation that lay ahead. And so, the dawn of the 1920s whispered its first story, slow, meditative, and endlessly enduring. The morning light filtered softly through narrow windows, casting gentle shadows across the worn wooden floors of a New York tenement. The buildings, stacked with countless families, seemed alive with quiet movement, the faint murmur of voices, the soft steps of children, the gentle creak of doors opening and closing. In one small apartment, a family stirred. Mothers quietly prepared breakfast, the scent of coffee and bread mingling with the cool morning air. Fathers readied themselves for long hours at the factory, their hands calloused, their movements practiced. Children dressed quickly, tying shoes and straightening collars, eager to step into the rhythm of another day. The apartment was crowded, every inch measured, every space shared, yet within these walls, small gestures of care and resilience thrived. A mother smoothed a child's hair. A father handed a piece of bread to a younger sibling. Neighbors whispered greetings across thin walls, each act, each word, weaving invisible threads of community and endurance. Beyond the apartment, the streets began to hum with life. Vendors called softly from carts, trolleys clattered along tracks, distant factory whistles sounded. The city was awake, alive, yet every sound seemed gentle, part of a quiet symphony of ordinary life. The rhythm of survival and daily labor carried the pulse of the neighborhood, steady, persistent, patient. In the factories, work awaited, the scent of coal, metal, and cloth filling the air. The labor was hard, monotonous, relentless. Yet within these routines, small joys persisted, the quiet conversation with a coworker, a shared joke, the fleeting satisfaction of a task well done. Every moment, though ordinary, was a testament to human perseverance. Even as the day progressed, subtle music threaded its way through the streets, the soft strains of jazz drifting from an open window, a piano note carried from a distant hall. The music was gentle, improvisational, fleeting, a reminder that even in hardship, there was room for beauty, for joy, for quiet escape. By midday, the tenement was a tapestry of ordinary life, children playing softly in corners, neighbors exchanging stories, meals prepared, dishes washed. The city's hum blended with human voices, creating a rhythm both subtle and enduring. Life moved slowly, patiently, with resilience woven into every gesture. As evening approached, lamps glowed softly, the streets quieted, families gathered for modest meals, whispered conversations, soft laughter, and the warmth of shared existence filled the apartments. And through it all, the faint pulse of music, the whispers of news, and the steady rhythm of the city carried the promise of continuity, endurance, and gentle hope. Here, in the crowded tenements of New York, ordinary Americans lived, worked, and thrived, quietly, patiently, each day a soft note in the larger symphony of the 1920s, resilient, enduring, and endlessly human. The morning light had fully awakened the tenement streets. Narrow alleys stretched between brick buildings, soft murmurs of conversation floated across doorways. Children's footsteps echoed lightly on cobblestones. Vendors called gently from their carts, their voices carried by a faint breeze. The city breathed slowly, steadily, patiently. Inside one apartment, life moved with careful rhythm. Mothers prepared lunches for factory workers, small bundles of food wrapped in cloth. Fathers readied their tools, tightened boots, and took deep, steady breaths. Each day began the same, repetitive, demanding. Yet within the repetition, resilience quietly thrived. The work itself was arduous. Factories hummed with activity. The scent of oil, metal, and smoke filled the air. Hands moved steadily, weaving, stamping, assembling. Each motion precise, practiced, essential. Time was measured in repetitive gestures, in the rhythm of labor. Yet even here, small moments of tenderness emerged. A whispered joke, a shared smile, the quiet satisfaction of a job done well. Children navigated the tight corridors of the tenement with care, dodging steps, balancing small bundles. The spaces were crowded, the walls thin. Yet these children carried curiosity and joy, small adventures in corners and alleys, games of imagination, laughter rising softly above the hum of daily toil. Their spirits, delicate yet enduring, were part of the tenement's subtle heartbeat. Neighbors, too, wove quiet threads of connection, a borrowed pot, a gentle warning, a shared meal. These small gestures were lifelines, binding families together in a tapestry of survival. Community was not loud, it was patient, persistent, quiet, and it thrived even amid hardship. In the evenings, a faint music drifted from a nearby hall, the soft, improvisational notes of jazz. Gentle piano keys, a slow, soft trumpet. The music, distant and fragile, touched hearts, reminding everyone that even in toil, even in struggle, there was beauty, quiet celebration, and fleeting escape. Prohibition whispered softly in the background, its rules strict, its presence felt in hushed conversations. Yet ordinary people found subtle ways to adapt. Small rebellions, secret enjoyment, gentle ingenuity. Life continued, quietly, patiently, creatively. The rhythm of survival intertwined seamlessly with these hints of freedom and subtle defiance. As night settled, the tenement glowed softly, lamps illuminated kitchens and bedrooms. Children yawned and stretched, families shared quiet meals. The city's hum softened, the distant clatter of trolleys faded. Even in darkness, the pulse of human endurance persisted, quietly, patiently, endlessly. In the crowded apartments and narrow streets of New York, ordinary Americans lived resiliently, their struggles and joys interwoven. A gentle, meditative rhythm, soft, enduring, and persistent, shaping the quiet tapestry of urban life in the early 1920s. Beyond the bustling streets of New York, past the hum of cities and small towns, lay the endless fields of Iowa. Gentle hills stretched softly under the morning sky. The air smelled faintly of fresh earth, growing crops, and dew. The land itself breathed slowly, patiently, steady and enduring. Farmers rose with the dawn, their movements deliberate, measured, the rhythm of the seasons guiding their days. Hands roughened from planting, plowing, and tending livestock, eyes patient, attentive. Every gesture was rooted in experience, in tradition, in quiet knowledge of the earth. Life on the farm was steady, enduring, filled with both labor and reflection. Children followed parents across fields, their small hands learning the textures of daily work, tying bundles, feeding animals, gathering eggs. They moved with curiosity and care, absorbing lessons of patience and resilience. Every step, every sound, every interaction became part of the quiet education of rural life. Then, one morning, a distant hum broke the gentle rhythm, faint at first, growing steadily. The Model T Ford had arrived, its wheels stirring dust softly across the dirt road. Farmers paused to watch, feeling curiosity mix with cautious excitement. The small automobile brought possibilities. Journeys that were once long and arduous now became gentle excursions. Connections to town, neighbors, and supplies were slowly transformed. The Model T became part of daily life. Trips to markets, deliveries of goods, visits to friends, even short rides across familiar fields brought a subtle sense of freedom. The car did not disrupt the farm's rhythm. It extended it, added new layers, quietly, gently, patiently, changing life in ways both practical and symbolic. Evenings on the farm were serene, the sun dipping behind distant hills, painting the sky in muted shades of pink, gold, and soft lavender. Families gathered for supper, the clatter of dishes blending with soft conversation, children's laughter mixing with the lowing of cows and the cooing of birds settling for the night. Life, patient and enduring, moved with the soft pulse of nature and subtle threads of modernity. Sometimes, faint sounds of music or news drifted from neighboring towns, the distant notes of a piano, the soft hum of a radio. These small reminders connected rural life to a broader world. Threads of culture, progress, and possibility quietly entered daily existence, linking isolated lives to the evolving rhythm of a nation. As night fell, stars twinkling softly above fields and barns, animals settled into quiet corners, families prepared for sleep. The farm itself seemed to exhale a patient, steady sigh, carrying with it hope, resilience, and the quiet promise of gentle change. Here, on Iowa's farmlands, life was rooted in the earth, yet softly touched by the whispers of modernity. The Model T Ford symbolized freedom, connection, and possibility, subtle, patient, persistent, quietly weaving the threads of a new decade into the enduring fabric of daily life. In a quiet town in Pennsylvania, streets were lined with modest homes, chimneys puffing gentle streams of smoke, sidewalks carried the soft footsteps of neighbors greeting each other. The air smelled faintly of freshly baked bread, coal fires, and morning dew. Life here moved slowly, patiently, each day unfolding with deliberate care. Families began their mornings gently, mothers tending children, preparing breakfast, and whispering reminders, fathers setting off to local shops, offices, or small factories. Children moved through the day with soft energy, balancing chores, play, and school. Their laughter carried lightly on the breeze, blending with the distant tolling of church bells, a gentle marker of the passage of time. And then, the quiet hum of modernity began to enter, softly, patiently. Radios appeared in living rooms, small boxes with glowing dials, quietly vibrating with distant voices, music, news, stories from places far away. Families gathered, leaning closer to hear the faint voices, children whispering about songs and stories, adults exchanging soft commentary. This small device carried the world into their homes, stretching imagination, shaping curiosity, and quietly threading a shared culture. Evenings offered another gentle escape. The local cinema flickered to life, soft light spilling across faces, illuminating imaginations. Adventures, romances, comedies, and dramas filled the rooms, stories from distant cities and lands. Yet they felt intimately familiar. Each family member absorbed the tales quietly, minds wandering, hearts opening to new ideas. These shared experiences began to create invisible connections, bridging neighborhoods, towns, and regions, weaving the soft pulse of national culture. Consumer goods arrived slowly, radios, small appliances, new clothing fashions. Families experienced subtle shifts in convenience and comfort. Even as work and chores persisted, these small introductions of modernity brought quiet delight, a gentle promise that life could stretch beyond the immediate routine. The town itself seemed to hum in gentle rhythm, neighbors greeting softly, children playing tag along streets, the distant call of a train, the faint echo of music from a nearby hall. Life was orderly, predictable, yet quietly enlivened by new ideas, new technologies, and subtle cultural shifts. Prohibition, though present, softened in small towns. Whispers of homemade traditions, subtle defiance, and quiet ingenuity filled the background. Its presence was acknowledged, yet life continued, patiently, resiliently, softly. As night fell, lamps glowed warmly in windows, streets settled into calm, the soft hum of radios, the flicker of cinema lights, and the faint laughter of children lingered. Families gathered for gentle conversation, children yawned, stretching into dreams. The town exhaled softly, a steady, enduring pulse, quietly embracing the subtle transformation of culture and community. In these small towns, life moved with measured patience, traditions mingled with new possibilities, and the early rhythms of national identity quietly threaded themselves into the daily patterns, soft, enduring, and endlessly gentle, shaping the quiet heartbeat of the 1920s. Beyond the modest homes of small towns, beyond the crowded streets of tenements, stretched the opulent estates of America's wealthy, expansive lawns, elegant mansions, and quiet, tree-lined avenues. Here, life moved in a different rhythm, slower, deliberate, yet also filled with its own subtle tensions and expectations. Inside these grand homes, mornings were gentle yet purposeful. Mothers oversaw household routines with quiet authority. Domestic staff moved silently through spacious kitchens and halls. Fathers reviewed letters, newspapers, and stock reports. Financial optimism pulsed softly in the background. Stocks were rising, investments promising more comfort, more leisure, more security. Children were taught to navigate this world with gentle precision. Lessons in manners, music, and languages, small excursions into culture, education, and refinement. Their lives, cushioned and guided, contrasted sharply with the struggles of tenement or farm life. Yet beneath the surface, quiet anxieties persisted, the fear of missteps, the weight of expectations, and the subtle tension of maintaining status. Afternoons often brought leisure, soft music drifting from pianos in drawing rooms, whispered conversations over tea garden strolls, tennis on manicured lawns, gentle parties with soft laughter, carefully curated. Each movement, each smile, each gesture carried purpose, a reflection of both privilege and restraint. The rhythm of life was soft, deliberate, patient, yet quietly charged with social expectation. Stock market optimism created a delicate backdrop. Conversations at dinner included the soft murmur of rising prices, speculative ventures, and cautious excitement. The promise of wealth extended gently into future dreams. Yet even here, life carried the subtle tension of uncertainty. Fortunes could rise and fall with quiet rapidity, a soft, persistent reminder that prosperity, even abundant, was never guaranteed. Evenings were luminous, chandeliers casting gentle light on polished wood, the soft clink of fine china, laughter drifting through halls. Guests whispered, moved, and observed. Social rituals were both pleasure and obligation, and in quiet moments, reflections of inequality and contrast lingered. A world apart, yet deeply connected to the rhythms of ordinary Americans, the same nation, yet lived differently. As night fell, the mansions glowed warmly, gardens shimmered under moonlight, music and soft conversation drifted through corridors. The rhythm of life, slow, deliberate, and indulgent, coexisted alongside the persistent pulse of work, labor, and quiet struggle elsewhere in the nation. The contrasts of 1920s America were subtle yet powerful, visible in quiet gestures, distant sounds, and unseen connections. Even in luxury, life demanded resilience, in tenements, in farms, in small towns, and even here, patience, endurance, and quiet vigilance shaped daily experience. Each class, each place, moving within the soft rhythms of a nation quietly awakening to modernity, patient, persistent, and enduring. In this gentle contrast, the 1920s revealed its layers: wealth and struggle, leisure and labor, promise and uncertainty, softly, quietly, endlessly interwoven into the fabric of daily life, a slow, patient pulse carrying the nation forward. As the sun dipped low over the American landscape, soft shadows stretched across streets, fields, and towns. The gentle hum of the nation's new rhythm was everywhere, subtle yet persistent. The decade's quiet pulse was carried in wheels turning on country roads, in the soft whir of airplanes high above, and in the faint vibrations of radios across homes. In the cities, trolleys clattered softly along streets. The distant roar of an automobile reminded pedestrians of the growing pace of life. Factory workers returned home, carrying with them the faint energy of machines. Yet even here, In urban bustle, the soft rhythm of daily existence remained measured, patient, enduring. On rural roads, the Model T Ford continued its quiet transformation. Farms once isolated were now connected to towns, markets, and neighbors. Goods, news, and ideas traveled further and faster. Each trip across dirt roads was a gentle reminder that the nation was slowly contracting in distance, moving, in a sense, closer together. Small towns hummed quietly with new sound and light. Radios softly transmitted music, news, and voices from distant cities. Families gathered to listen, quietly absorbing the world beyond their streets. Cinema screens flickered with stories from faraway places. Children whispered about adventures. Adults discussed events. The town, connected yet intimate, began to feel part of a broader whole, a nation softly threaded together by technology, culture, and shared experience. Prohibition and social changes quietly overlapped with this new connectivity. Ideas, news, and trends spread softly across towns and cities. Yet even amid modernity, rhythms of traditional life persisted: farmers tending fields, factory hands laboring, children playing. These threads wove together to create the subtle texture of 1920s life, measured, patient, and enduring. As evening deepened, trains hummed along distant tracks, carrying passengers across states. Airplanes occasionally cut the sky, silent yet transformative. Automobiles glided along highways, their headlights casting gentle glimmers along country roads. These new modes of travel connected lives in ways unimaginable a decade before, subtly reshaping perceptions of distance and time. Night settled gently across tenements, farms, small towns, and mansions. Lamps glowed softly, families rested, the distant sounds of travel, music, and conversation blended into the quiet rhythm of the nation. The United States, though vast and diverse, was beginning to feel intertwined, connected by gentle threads of mobility, communication, and culture. In this quiet connectivity, the ordinary and the privileged, the urban and the rural, the factory worker and the wealthy socialite, all became part of a larger, patient rhythm, a slow, enduring, meditative pulse that carried the nation forward, quietly, gently, endlessly, preparing America for the challenges, triumphs, and changes yet to come. The 1920s had woven a subtle network, connecting people, ideas, and places, a calm, persistent reminder that even amid struggle, labor, and quiet uncertainty, the nation was softly, patiently awakening to modernity, to connection, to possibility. In the quiet suburbs and tree-lined avenues of America's wealthiest neighborhoods, sunlight spilled gently across manicured lawns and grand gates. The air carried the faint fragrance of flowers, freshly cut grass, and polished wood. The world here moved slowly, deliberately, each motion purposeful, each day unfolding with quiet elegance. Inside the grand mansions, mornings began with soft ritual. Mothers quietly moved through spacious kitchens, overseeing breakfast prepared by attentive staff. The clink of fine china and silverware echoed gently through high-ceilinged rooms. Fathers, seated near large windows, read newspapers and stock reports, the soft rustle of paper accompanying the morning light. Every detail mattered, every movement measured. Children emerged from expansive bedrooms, soft laughter, whispered greetings, and careful steps on polished floors. Tutors prepared lessons, music teachers tuned pianos. Gentle training in manners, language, and refinement began quietly. The rhythm of childhood in wealth was both leisurely and structured, a gentle balance between freedom and expectation. Servants moved silently through corridors, the quiet shuffle of slippers across polished floors. Trays carried delicacies, steaming beverages, and carefully arranged fruit. The mansion was alive with movement, yet each sound was soft, measured, and intentional. Life here was ordered, deliberate, patient, filled with subtle layers of ritual and comfort. Outside, gardens glimmered with morning dew. Fountains trickled softly, pathways curved with deliberate grace. Walks through the estate were quiet meditations, a pause in the day's rhythm. The wealthy moved with ease, yet beneath this calm, careful planning and awareness guided every action. Even leisure required patience, attention, and soft discipline. The day's possibilities stretched gently before them. Social engagements, cultural outings, and leisurely excursions awaited. All life seemed carefully choreographed, a soft symphony of privilege, routine, and subtle excitement. Even amid luxury, life demanded attentiveness, quiet vigilance, a patient awareness of status, opportunity, and connection. And yet, within the softness of luxury, beneath the polished surfaces, subtle reflections lingered, the awareness of societal expectation, the need to maintain reputation, the quiet tension between indulgence and responsibility. These rhythms, though gentle, were persistent, shaping the daily pulse of the elite. As the morning deepened, light spilled across polished floors, illuminated drawing rooms, and highlighted ornate details. Chandeliers glinted softly, the mansion exhaled slowly, a patient, enduring sigh, carrying with it the quiet rhythm of comfort, order, and subtle social power. Here, in these grand homes, life moved slowly, deliberately, patiently, every gesture, every sound, every interaction a soft note in the larger symphony of elite life, gentle, enduring, endlessly measured, a quiet reflection of the contrasts and connections of the 1920s. As the morning light softened into the gentle warmth of midday, the grand mansions continued their quiet rhythm. Servants moved silently through expansive halls, arranging fresh flowers, polishing silver, dusting gleaming surfaces. Each gesture precise, deliberate, carrying the weight of routine and the expectation of elegance. In sunlit drawing rooms, mothers oversaw lessons, correspondence, and gentle planning for the afternoon. Soft rustles of paper and low voices filled the spaces. Every detail attended to, every movement measured. The world here existed in quiet layers of purpose and ease. Outside, gardens invited quiet contemplation. Fountains trickled softly, their water catching sunlight in gentle sparks. Children wandered along stone paths, their laughter subdued yet bright. Tutors guided piano practice. Music flowed gently, weaving a delicate harmony with the soft chirping of birds. The rhythm of life in these estates was both leisurely and structured, a balance of indulgence and subtle responsibility. Lunch was a calm affair, sunlight streaming through tall windows, tables set with precision, fine china and crystal catching light. Conversation moved softly, measured, and deliberate. Topics ranged from distant travels, literature, cultural events, to whispers of the latest stock news. The pulse of wealth beat quietly, yet persistently, informed by opportunity, refinement, and careful observation. Social gatherings awaited. Afternoon teas, garden strolls, and gentle visits to neighbors were conducted with soft elegance. Each step, each gesture, carefully orchestrated, conversations light but attentive, polite smiles exchanged, eyes observing, thoughts moving softly beneath courteous words. These rituals were both pleasure and expectation, a quiet choreography of privilege. The stock market hummed in the background, subtle, ever-present. Fathers and older sons sometimes paused to review the morning's changes. Papers rustled, numbers flickered. Optimism mixed with caution, a gentle tension that threaded through conversations and quiet reflections. Even amidst leisure, awareness of wealth's fragility persisted, softly, unobtrusively guiding decisions and shaping expectations. Afternoons in the mansions were not hurried. Time moved deliberately, patiently, soft music in parlors, the occasional sound of laughter drifting across terraces, the distant murmur of automobiles on tree-lined avenues. Life existed in gentle cycles, a careful balance of routine, indulgence, and quiet engagement with a world beyond the estate. Even in this insulated life, subtle awareness of the wider society lingered. Servants, deliveries, occasional news of economic change, reminders that the world extended beyond gates and manicured lawns. The rhythm of luxury coexisted quietly with the broader currents of the 1920s, softly linking privilege with responsibility, with opportunity, and with the understated pulse of connection. As midday faded into the soft glow of afternoon, sunbeams shifted across gardens, drawing rooms, and long corridors. life moved gently. The mansion exhaled a patient sigh, a reminder that even in comfort, time moved quietly, deliberately, shaping experience, expectation, and the enduring rhythm of elite life. Here, in these estates, wealth was soft yet present, deliberate yet indulgent, a quiet pulse threading the lives of those who shaped, observed, and moved within the subtle currents of 1920s America. As the afternoon sun dipped toward the horizon, long shadows stretched across manicured lawns and polished corridors. The estate seemed to pause, to breathe, quietly, each room, each hallway, carrying the soft anticipation of evening. Servants moved with gentle precision, polishing silverware, laying fine linens, arranging fresh flowers. The faint scent of roses and polished wood mingled with the aroma of prepared dishes, every detail attended to with care, a quiet choreography of preparation. Inside, family members readied themselves for the evening, soft fabrics rustling as dresses and suits were adjusted. Gentle laughter punctuated muted conversations, the ritual of appearance, presentation, and grace unfolding in measured steps. Mirrors reflected calm concentration, each gesture deliberate, every movement an expression of refinement. Evening in these mansions held promise of social gatherings, of conversation, of subtle dances between obligation and pleasure. The world outside the gates seemed distant, yet even within these walls, thoughts of connection, reputation, and opportunity lingered quietly, guiding, shaping, softly influencing every decision. The stock market, still a gentle presence, hummed in background awareness, numbers and trends lightly discussed over tea, plans and considerations woven into conversation with soft discretion. The pulse of wealth was both comforting and tentative, a quiet tension threading the evening. As nightfall approached, the first guests began to arrive. Footsteps on gravel paths, soft greetings, the gentle clink of glass. Conversations flowed quietly, polite, attentive. Observations were made in whispers and glances. The rituals of social life, subtle yet pervasive, unfolded like a delicate symphony, a soft cadence of connection, impression, and expectation. Music drifted from parlors, the piano or a softly played violin. Notes traveled lightly through open windows and high ceilings, adding a gentle rhythm to the evening, enhancing the ambience, creating a sense of elegance, calm, and continuity. The pulse of culture intertwined softly with the pulse of wealth, a quiet reflection of the times. Inside bedrooms, private reflections occurred, letters written, soft conversations with confidants, fleeting moments of introspection. Even in lives filled with privilege, thoughts turned inward, considerations of duty, desire, and identity moving softly beneath the exterior of refinement. The evening was both a performance and a pause, a space where luxury, ritual, and human nuance intersected. Subtle awareness of the outside world, whispers of change, society's rhythm, were present but muted. Life moved in gentle cycles, patient, deliberate, and enduring. As the mansion settled into night, the lamps glowed softly, gardens darkened under the calm sky. The estate exhaled slowly, a patient, quiet rhythm, carrying with it the gentle cadence of privilege, reflection, and social grace. Here, in these grand homes, evening was a time of measured movement, a blend of expectation, observation, and quiet indulgence, softly threading the elite's lives into the subtle fabric of 1920s America, patient, persistent, and endlessly reflective. Night settled softly over the estates, a gentle calm draped across lawns, fountains, and tree-lined avenues. The glow from chandeliers illuminated drawing rooms, casting warm, shimmering light on polished floors. The world seemed to exhale, patient, deliberately. Guests arrived with measured steps, soft laughter, polite greetings, the faint rustle of elegant fabrics. Conversations flowed in gentle currents, light, attentive, observant. The rhythm of the evening was deliberate, a dance of impression, connection, and subtle expectation. Each gesture, each glance, carried weight, yet floated with quiet grace. Music filled the halls, softly, a piano, the gentle strum of a harp, a muted violin. Notes lingered in the air, weaving with murmured conversation, creating a soothing, immersive ambience. Each sound added to the quiet elegance, a soft heartbeat of the evening. Tables bore delicate refreshments, fine china, crystal, carefully arranged foods. Guests moved with care, tasting, observing, commenting. Soft smiles and attentive nods punctuated the gentle cadence of interaction. The night was both indulgence and ritual, a patient balancing act. Even as laughter rose softly, beneath it lingered awareness of social standing, expectations, opportunity, and the gentle tension of reputation. Conversations navigated topics of art, travel, investments, and culture, lightly, softly, carefully. Every exchange a note in the symphony of social grace. Outside, the gardens whispered in the night air, fountains trickled, the rustle of leaves accompanied faint footsteps. Some guests wandered quietly, reflecting, whispering, observing the estate's beauty, moments of calm amidst social energy. The night expanded, enveloping all in its patient embrace. Meanwhile, stock news quietly persisted, conversations interspersed with gentle discussions of markets, investments, and opportunities. Even in leisure, the pulse of wealth and anticipation quietly threaded itself into every gesture, every thought. Late into the night, smaller gatherings formed, intimate discussions, private conversations, gentle music continued. Laughter softened, the estate's rhythm slowed. Guests retired, the mansion exhaled slowly, a serene, enduring sigh. The night's activities had woven connection, indulgence, and quiet observation into the social tapestry. Here, in these luxurious homes, night was a meditation of wealth, subtle, deliberate, and refined. The pulse of society, culture, and expectation moved softly, patiently, connecting lives in ways both visible and invisible, gently shaping the quiet rhythm of 1920s elite life. As midnight approached, lamps glowed softly, corridors hushed, gardens quieted. Life in the mansion slowed to a gentle heartbeat, reflective, measured, and enduring a calm, persistent rhythm, patiently carrying the legacy of privilege, ritual, and subtle elegance through the night. As the deep night enveloped the grand estates, a subtle undercurrent lingered. Beneath the laughter, music, and ritual, a quiet awareness of the broader world, a gentle recognition that wealth, though abundant, was not untouched by change. Conversations occasionally drifted toward the stock market, numbers, trends, and investments softly discussed over tea or in private parlors. Optimism persisted, yet it mingled with quiet reflection. The awareness that fortunes, no matter how carefully managed, could shift in unforeseen ways. Servants moved silently through the corridors, attending to lamps, replenishing refreshments, tidying rooms. Their presence was both invisible and essential, a reminder that even in luxury, life depended on steady, patient labor. The rhythm of work, though hidden from many, quietly shaped the flow of daily life. Children slept or read quietly in expansive bedrooms. Tutors observed softly. The pulse of education, refinement, and expectation continued. Even the youngest were subtly aware of the world's rhythms, absorbing lessons of responsibility, opportunity, and social awareness gently, patiently. Outside the mansions, the distant hum of towns, factories, and trains reminded the wealthy that their world was part of a larger, interconnected nation. Tenements, farms, and small towns persisted quietly in their own rhythms. The contrast was stark, yet subtly acknowledged. A soft reflection, a gentle tension, the nation's disparities quietly threaded into every conversation and gesture. As night deepened further, private moments of reflection occurred, letters written, thoughts pondered, silent walks through gardens. Individuals considered their place in the world, the interplay of fortune, labor, and opportunity. Even in abundance, life carried nuance, subtle anxieties, patient awareness of impermanence. The rhythm of the mansion slowed, soft music fading, lamps glowing dimly, corridors hushed. Each breath, Each step, each thought moved gently, deliberately, connecting the lives of the elite to the broader pulse of a nation quietly transforming. Even amid luxury, life demanded patience, attention, and awareness. Every gesture, every interaction carried weight. The world beyond the gates remained present, softly influencing daily experience. The pulse of 1920s America threading subtly through polished halls and quiet gardens. Here, in the calm of night, the wealthiest world rested alongside the laboring, the striving, and the dreaming of others. Each class, each place, each life, softly intertwined in the quiet rhythm of the decade, patient, persistent, and enduring. As the mansion exhaled slowly, bathed in the soft glow of lamps and moonlight, the pulse of privilege, caution, and subtle reflection carried on, a gentle reminder that even in abundance, awareness of uncertainty was constant, quietly shaping the rhythm of elite life. As midnight deepened over the estates, a quiet awareness of the wider world lingered, beyond the manicured lawns, beyond the polished corridors and softly glowing lamps. The nation continued its gentle, persistent rhythm, quietly stretching, moving, and connecting. Automobiles glided along distant roads, their headlights softly illuminating the darkened landscape, the faint hum of engines a reminder that travel, freedom, and connection were expanding. Even the wealthiest, insulated within gates and gardens, were subtly linked to these quiet transformations, aware that distance was shrinking and opportunity and change flowed steadily across the land. Trains moved in the distance, their steady whistle a soft signal of progress, passengers traveling across states, connecting cities, towns, and farms. The pulse of mobility threaded itself invisibly through the country, quietly knitting together disparate lives, experiences, and aspirations. Airplanes occasionally cut through the night sky, distant lights blinking softly. Their presence, though rare, signaled a future of rapid movement and connection. The wealthy observed these developments with curiosity, and with awareness that the rhythms of the nation, though distant, were inseparable from their own. Inside the mansions, radios continued to hum softly, distant voices carried music, news, and stories across invisible waves. The elite, though physically insulated, absorbed the currents of national culture, the rise of shared media, of conversation, and of awareness, a gentle thread linking even the most secluded lives to the nation's pulse. Night deepened, corridors quieted, gardens hushed, reflections lingered in the minds of those awake. Thoughts of connection, opportunity, and responsibility intertwined with the gentle rhythm of privilege. The nation, vast and varied, moved softly, each life, each town, each city a part of a patient, enduring flow. Even amid luxury, life demanded awareness, patience, subtle reflection. The contrast between worlds, tenements, farms, small towns, and mansions was present, yet bridged gently by the pulse of communication, transportation, and shared experience. The mansion exhaled slowly, softly, patiently. The lamps glowed in quiet rhythm with the distant trains, automobiles, and hum of radios. The lives within these walls, though distinct, were intertwined with the broader currents of the nation, quietly, endlessly, and with gentle persistence. In these final hours of night, as moonlight touched lawns and windows, the rhythm of 1920s America was clear, a subtle web of connection, threading across class, geography, and experience, the decade quietly preparing the nation for both its triumphs and its coming challenges, patiently, softly, endlessly. As the 1920s unfolded, a quiet revolution moved through the landscape of America, not in grand proclamations, not in loud declarations, but in the soft hum of wheels on rails, the gentle purr of automobiles, and the distant whir of airplanes above. The nation was learning a new rhythm, patient, persistent, and quietly transformative. Across cities and towns, trains glided along iron tracks, their steady movement a gentle pulse connecting distant places. Passengers settled into soft seats, gazing out at passing fields, forests, and rivers. Each mile carried them closer to family, commerce, and opportunity. The rhythm of rail travel was deliberate, soothing, a gentle bridge between lives separated by distance. On country roads, the Model T Ford quietly reshaped rural life. Farmers once isolated by miles of dirt paths now moved more freely, transporting goods, visiting neighbors, and accessing markets previously distant. The soft roar of engines, the gentle bump of wheels over uneven roads. These sounds signaled change, mobility, connection, a new way of experiencing the vast landscape. Airplanes, though still rare, cut across the skies with quiet promise. Their distant hum hinted at a future where even the greatest distances could be conquered swiftly. Even the wealthiest and most remote estates could be linked to distant cities, towns, and horizons beyond imagination. The nation, vast and varied, felt smaller, more intimate, yet vast in its possibilities. Alongside movement, communication transformed quietly. Radios transmitted voices, music, and news across invisible waves. Families in cities, towns, and farms tuned in, absorbing the rhythms of distant lives, stories from faraway places blending with local experience. The pulse of the nation was slowly synchronizing, creating shared understanding, curiosity, and anticipation. Highways and roads, some paved, others still dusted with dirt, carried new energy. Automobiles transformed perception of time and distance. Trips that once took days now took hours, journeys became leisure, connection, exploration. A gentle acceleration of life, soft yet persistent, reshaped expectations, habits, and imagination. Even in quiet moments, the transformation was visible: the soft whistle of a distant train, the glow of headlights on a country road, the faint hum of an airplane overhead, the gentle static and music from a radio. These small signals, patient and subtle, threaded the nation together, softly, endlessly. Night fell, and lights flickered along streets, tracks, and airfields. The pulse of transportation and communication continued, a gentle heartbeat connecting lives, work, and dreams. The 1920s moved quietly, patiently, reshaping the nation's experience of space, time, and connection. Here, in these hours, the new rhythm of America became apparent: a subtle, patient dance, trains, cars, airplanes, and radios threading a nation together, quietly, gently, and endlessly. In the soft glow of early morning, a journalist began a journey across the vast expanse of America. The mission was quiet, deliberate, to witness the gentle transformation of a nation through the lens of movement and connection. The train station hummed with subdued energy, passengers boarding with quiet anticipation. Steam hissed softly, wheels turned slowly at first, then picked up rhythm. The journalist settled into a seat by the window, pen in hand, notebook ready, observing, recording, absorbing. Each passing mile carried new impressions: fields rolling into towns, towns stretching into cities. A landscape in transition, patient, persistent, and quietly alive. Alongside the tracks, the soft blur of countryside suggested both continuity and change. Farms modernized with automobiles and improved equipment. Rural families moved with a new freedom. Trips once arduous became routine. The quiet purr of engines, the occasional horn, and the rustle of tires across dirt roads signaled a subtle revolution, connecting places, people, and possibilities. Airports, though still small and uncommon, offered glimpses into the future. Planes rested on quiet runways, propellers gently spinning in anticipation. The journalist observed travelers boarding, the sense of possibility and exhilaration barely contained. Above, airplanes traced the sky, distant and soft, moving the nation closer together, bridging the immense distances that once defined isolation. In cities, the pulse of movement was denser, more rhythmic. Automobiles weaved softly among streetcars, pedestrians navigated sidewalks, delivery wagons rolled past. Every sound, every motion added to the rhythm of urban life, the pulse of connection threading through neighborhoods, avenues, and boulevards. Along the journey, radios in homes, hotels, and public spaces hummed softly. Music, news, and conversations drifted across invisible waves. The journalist noted families listening attentively, absorbing the wider world while grounded in their local experience. The nation's consciousness expanded quietly, patiently, linking lives through culture and shared understanding. Evening approached in small towns along the route. The journalist disembarked briefly, noting the interplay of tradition and modernity. Children played near sidewalks. Farmers returned from fields in quiet anticipation of supper. The soft purr of cars and distant whistles of trains reminded everyone that life was moving, evolving, connecting. Night descended over the train tracks, highways, and airfields. Lights glimmered across cities and towns. The journalist reflected on the subtle magic of movement, how travel was more than distance. It was connection, perspective, and the quiet shaping of thought. Each mile threaded the nation together, every journey weaving new understanding, new awareness. In this vast, patient, and quietly evolving landscape, the journalist witnessed the pulse of the 1920s, the nation's rhythm soft, persistent. The quiet hum of engines, the subtle whistle of trains, the gentle static of radios, all whispered of a country gradually discovering the beauty, promise, and vulnerability of interconnectedness. As the night deepened, the train continued its steady rhythm, passing lights and shadows, cities and fields, moving the journalist and the nation gently forward, patient, persistent, and endlessly intertwined. A soft, enduring heartbeat carried across miles and memories, quietly shaping the story of 1920s America. The train moved steadily eastward, its wheels singing a gentle rhythm. The journalist, notebook open, observed quietly, absorbing the landscapes, the towns, and the people whose lives unfolded softly beneath the hum of progress. Small towns emerged from the fields, streets lined with modest homes, shopfronts illuminated with warm light. Children played quietly near sidewalks, their laughter mingling with the distant purr of engines. The rhythm of daily life seemed both timeless and subtly changed. A car or two rolled by, signaling that modernity had quietly arrived, blending with the traditions of local life. On rural farms, tractors hummed softly, silos stood tall, and the occasional Model T rattled over dirt roads. Farmers moved with purpose, balancing labor with the new opportunities of mechanization. The journalist noted the small revolutions unfolding, lives made lighter, work made faster, communities subtly transformed. Movement itself became a soft agent of change, connecting the isolated with the larger world. In cityscapes, the pulse was different. Streetcars glided along rails, automobiles threaded through avenues, shop windows displayed goods from distant factories. Radios softly played music in storefronts. People walked briskly, but with an air of curiosity, observing the subtle fusion of technology, culture, and human rhythm. Each movement, each glance, each interaction whispered of a society quietly evolving. The journalist reflected on the subtler transformations. Shared culture, once local and isolated, now traveled invisibly. Music, news, and ideas moved through airwaves. Novels and newspapers reached towns and farms alike. Evening radios hummed softly in kitchens and living rooms, carrying distant voices into quiet spaces. Americans, though separated by miles, were beginning to share experience. Meals in towns and farms mirrored these subtle changes, new ingredients arriving by truck or train, modern conveniences easing daily work. Evenings brought families together around radio programs, quietly sharing laughter, information, and reflection. The pulse of daily life had begun to align with the nation's emerging rhythm, softly, endlessly. On highways and country roads, headlights glimmered in the night. Automobiles carried travelers to neighbors, distant relatives, and new opportunities. The landscape, once measured in days of travel, now responded to hours. Life moved faster, yet quietly, comfortably, allowing time for reflection and subtle adjustment to this evolving pace. Airplanes occasionally traced arcs above, their hum a faint reminder of a future yet to come. Passengers in cabins below felt the world expand, perceptions of distance, of possibility, of connection gently shifting. Even the most secluded towns and estates were touched by these quiet agents of change. As the night deepened, the journalist noted the hum of industry, the soft glow of city lights, the distant whistle of trains. All spoke of a nation quietly weaving itself together, each movement a thread in the tapestry of connection, mobility, and shared experience. The 1920s revealed themselves not just in spectacle, but in these gentle, persistent transformations. The train carried the travelers steadily onward, past fields, towns, and cities, each mile a meditation on change, connection, and the subtle, enduring pulse of a nation quietly awakening to the possibilities of technology, communication, and mobility. In the gentle stillness of night, the journalist reflected on the country's rhythm, trains, cars, airplanes, and radios quietly aligning lives, cultures, and communities, a soft, patient symphony of movement, shaping the soul of 1920s America. The morning light stretched softly across rolling fields and quiet towns. Alongside the tracks and roads, ordinary Americans moved with gentle purpose. Farmers tended crops, shopkeepers arranged wares, children ran along sidewalks with unhurried laughter. Life persisted, steady and patient, yet softly altered by the rhythms of new mobility. Along a country road, a Model T rumbled slowly past, its tires kicking up dust that shimmered in the morning sun. The driver, a farmer returning from a market, carried goods and messages between neighbors. A simple journey, yet one that spoke volumes of freedom, connection, and the quiet reshaping of daily life. Train stations buzzed softly, not with chaos, but with the gentle rhythm of arrival and departure. Porters moved quietly with luggage, tickets were exchanged, greetings whispered. Families welcomed relatives from distant cities. Farmers returned from markets with small purchases. Each train brought distant worlds closer, threading lives together in invisible, delicate patterns. On the sidewalks of small towns, radios in store windows hummed softly. Families paused to listen. Notes of jazz, soft advertisements, and news mingled with the sounds of horses' hooves and car engines. Music, once local and personal, now traveled invisibly, threading communities together, shared experience spreading quietly across miles. Even in the rural fields, tractors hummed, replacing the slower labor of plowing. Yet side by side, traditional tools remained. Life was neither abandoned nor rushed. Modernity blended gently with custom, each innovation subtly shifting routines, shaping thoughts, conversations, and plans for the future. Mail arrived via train and automobile. Letters, small packages, and newspapers brought the distant world to each doorstep. Mothers unfolded pages, children eagerly turned them. Information traveled at a new speed, quietly connecting local life to national and even international rhythms. Evening descended across towns and farms. The glow of lanterns and street lamps reflected softly on windows. Families gathered in kitchens and parlors, listening to the radio, discussing news, or simply sharing quiet conversation. The pulse of America, previously dispersed and isolated, moved gently in unison, a rhythm felt rather than loudly proclaimed. Along highways and tracks, travelers returned home. The hum of engines faded, footsteps softened, yet the connections made throughout the day persisted. Daily life, both ordinary and extraordinary, was quietly reshaped, new patterns of mobility, communication, and awareness threading subtly through each life. As the night deepened, stars reflected faintly on windshield glass and train windows. The nation's pulse, quiet yet persistent, connected the lives of farmers, shopkeepers, children, and travelers alike. Each mile traveled, each broadcast received, each interaction conducted softly built a new tapestry of American life, patient, persistent, and endlessly woven. Here, along the arteries of connection, trains, automobiles, and airplanes moved softly, threading tradition and modernity into a gentle rhythm. A nation, vast and varied, began to beat together, quietly, gently, endlessly. The morning sun spilled softly across streets, tracks, and fields. The nation moved with a quiet, patient rhythm. Roads carried automobiles, trains glided steadily, and airplanes traced arcs above. Every movement reshaped the perception of space and time, once measured in days, now measured in hours. Railroads stitched the vast landscape together. Small towns, distant farms, and bustling cities felt closer. Packages traveled farther, news arrived sooner, and families maintained connections across miles. The steady movement of trains became a heartbeat, a soft, persistent rhythm quietly synchronizing lives. Automobiles, steadily growing in presence, reshaped daily experience. Farmers traveled to markets once distant. Families visited relatives in neighboring towns. Leisure became possible where previously it was impractical. Each journey compressed distance, creating subtle shifts in expectation, routine, and imagination. Airplanes, though still emerging, hinted at possibilities previously unimaginable. The sky, once empty, now offered passage, swift, silent, and transformative. Flights were brief glimpses into a future where distance was no longer a barrier. The nation quietly contemplated new horizons, anticipating the freedom and connection these machines could bring. Communication networks followed closely. Radios softly transmitted music, stories, and news into homes. Families tuned in together, shared experiences emerging across towns, farms, and cities. A soft, invisible web connected listeners, subtly synchronizing awareness and imagination. Each broadcast became a gentle pulse, tying isolated lives into a broader rhythm. Evening brought quiet reflection. Streets hummed softly with returning travelers. Factories, fields, and offices slowed. Families gathered around radios. Children, parents, and grandparents shared music, news, and conversation. The rhythm of the nation was now audible, perceptible, and gently synchronizing daily life. Infrastructure, roads, railways, airfields, and communication lines was reshaping more than travel. It was reshaping thought, expectation, and perception. Distance was compressed, time subtly altered, and the once isolated now shared in a national consciousness. The nation's pulse, quiet yet insistent, moved steadily, persistently. Across the landscape, the journalist noted the blending of tradition and modernity. Old routines adapted to new possibilities. Farms balanced mechanization with heritage. Towns retained their charm even as automobiles threaded the streets. Every journey, every broadcast, every connection quietly transformed the understanding of community, identity, and belonging. As night fell, lamps glimmered across towns and estates. The soft hum of engines, the distant whistle of trains, and the faint whir of airplanes filled the air. The rhythm of the 1920s was patient, subtle, and continuous, a gentle orchestration of movement, connection, and awareness. In the quiet of night, the nation rested, yet beneath the stillness, threads of connection, shared experience, and movement wove a fabric of understanding, slowly, endlessly, quietly preparing the country for the transformations, prosperity, and challenges that lay ahead. Night settled softly over towns, cities, and farms. The hum of movement and communication continued, subtle and persistent. Automobiles glided on distant roads. Trains traced arcs across the landscape. Airplanes, rare but steady, whispered of a future just beyond reach. Each motion quietly reshaped the nation's sense of itself. Families and communities began to think differently. Distances no longer seemed insurmountable. News traveled swiftly. Music, stories, and ideas moved invisibly across airwaves. Children listened to voices from other towns, imagining faraway lives. Adults considered opportunities previously inaccessible. Perspectives shifted gently, almost imperceptibly, yet profoundly. Travel brought subtle awareness. Townspeople noticed fashions, customs, and innovations from other regions. Farmers observed market trends in distant cities. Merchants gauged customer interests beyond their immediate surroundings. The nation's consciousness expanded slowly, threaded through movement and observation. The journalist, traveling patiently across the nation, noted the psychological impact. Mobility and communication gave rise to quiet confidence, curiosity, imagination. Individuals, families, and communities understood that they were part of something larger. A nation no longer isolated by distance, but gently connected, moving in unison through subtle rhythms. Evenings brought reflection. Radios hummed softly, families listened, laughed, and discussed. Stories, songs, and news linked lives across miles. Americans, previously separated by geography, now shared experiences, forming a cultural cohesion that was both gentle and profound. Transportation also quietly altered daily routines. Trips that once required days now took hours. People planned differently, anticipated opportunities, managed time with new awareness. The pulse of the nation, once slow and fragmented, now moved with a gentle synchronization, subtly influencing thought, aspiration, and identity. Culturally, music, dance, and entertainment began to resonate across regions. Jazz drifted into towns, bringing new rhythms and expressions. Movies traveled across theaters, inspiring imagination and conversation. The nation, quietly listening and watching, absorbed these currents, slowly shaping a shared identity. In quiet moments, families and travelers reflected on these changes. The world felt both larger and smaller, accessible yet vast. Familiar routines intertwined with novelty. The rhythm of life shifted softly, blending tradition with modernity, patience guiding adaptation, observation fostering understanding. As the night deepened, lights shimmered across highways, railways, and airfields. The hum of engines, the distant whistle of trains, and the faint static of radios filled the air. The pulse of the nation, invisible yet undeniable, connected lives across the country, tightly, gently, endlessly. In this serene, patient rhythm, Americans experienced a subtle transformation, not always noticed, but deeply felt. Their understanding of distance, time, community, and identity was quietly reshaped, preparing the nation for both the promise and the challenges of the years to come, patiently, softly, and endlessly, as the golden glow of late autumn filtered softly across towns, farms, and cities. A quiet tension began to drift through the air. The nation, vibrant and bustling in the 1920s, carried an undercurrent of uncertainty, almost imperceptible, yet present in the hearts of many. In small town streets, shopkeepers closed their windows with a faint unease. Ledgers reflected slower sales than expected. Farmers counted bushels and coins carefully, measuring returns from markets that were subtly shifting. The rhythm of prosperity, once steady and reassuring, now carried small, uncertain pauses. Even in the hum of factories, whispers of layoffs and reduced hours moved quietly among workers. Machines continued their steady pace, yet the human pulse within them reflected worry. Families in tenements felt it subtly, each step measured, each coin spent with careful thought. Survival remained patient, persistent, and often anxious. In cities, the stock ticker hummed softly, a constant reminder of wealth, speculation, and risk. Investors, from modest to wealthy, observed the numbers flicker and change, a dance of promise and fragility. Social gatherings, elegant and bright, sometimes carried undercurrents of whispered concern. Even among the elite, the ground felt less certain. Radio voices carried news across towns and homes. Markets, trade reports, and distant rumors flowed invisibly through wires and airwaves. Families listened with quiet attention, each broadcast, a thread connecting them to the broader national condition, awareness spreading, subtle yet inescapable. Along rural roads, the hum of automobiles continued, yet the journeys felt different. Farmers returned from markets with cautious optimism. Supplies were calculated carefully. Every mile traveled, every purchase made, reflected both hope and restraint, subtle signs of an underlying fragility. Nightfall brought reflection across households. Lamps glowed softly, streets quieted, and children slept peacefully, unaware of the currents beneath daily life. Adults considered the delicate balance of earnings, savings, and obligations. The nation's pulse, previously confident and forward-moving, now carried gentle ripples of concern. The journalist, traveling quietly through towns and cities, noted these subtleties: conversations in cafes, pauses in marketplaces, the quiet calculation of expenses in homes and offices. These small, almost invisible markers reflected a collective awareness, a nation sensing, without fully seeing, the challenges approaching on the horizon. Even in elegant estates, the wealthy observed the world with careful attention. Conversations at dinners softly touched the fragility of markets, the speculation in investments, and the subtle shifts in consumer confidence. Laughter mingled with thought, celebration threaded with quiet reflection. Across America, from tenements to farms, small towns to urban streets, and mansions to workplaces, the nation felt itself gently bracing, a soft anticipation, a quiet questioning of certainty, the last echoes of the roaring decade mingling with whispers of the unknown. As night deepened, the glow of streetlights, lamps, and lanterns reflected the duality of the times. Life continued patiently, work persisted, hopes remained, yet beneath it all, a subtle awareness lingered that the prosperity of the 1920s, vibrant and vast, was delicately balanced, ready to shift, softly, quietly, inevitably. The soft light of morning fell over streets, fields, and avenues. The nation moved as always, quietly, routinely, yet subtle signs of strain began to appear. In city neighborhoods, shopkeepers noticed shelves that didn't empty as quickly. Customers lingered longer, counting coins, weighing needs, making choices with cautious deliberation. In the tenements of New York, immigrant families felt the tension in the air. Factory work remained grueling, but layoffs whispered through corridors. The clatter of machines was punctuated by anxious conversations. Children played quietly in alleys. Mothers and fathers calculated expenses with gentle care. Survival required vigilance, even in the hum of routine. On rural farms, the harvest brought its usual rhythm, yet the quiet strain was visible. Crops sold for slightly less than expected. Supplies cost more than before. Families traveled to nearby towns with a cautious eye, every mile a measured decision. The hum of a Model T on dusty roads became a reminder of both opportunity and responsibility, freedom tempered by uncertainty. In small-town Pennsylvania, middle-class homes reflected subtle shifts. Radios carried news of stock fluctuations, market tensions, and distant rumors. Families discussed these reports softly, dinners punctuated by questions and quiet reflection. Children noticed parents' concerned expressions, sensing without fully understanding, life's rhythm felt a shade slower. Even among the wealthy, subtle tremors were present. Elegant parties continued, yet conversations occasionally touched speculation and caution. Investments were watched with careful eyes. Portfolios balanced with an unspoken awareness. The air of carefree luxury remained, but beneath it flowed a gentle current of concern. Trains and automobiles, symbols of mobility and connection, moved steadily. Yet travelers noticed small changes. Fewer passengers on certain routes, farmers and merchants taking more cautious trips. Supplies arriving with slightly delayed schedules. Even the rhythm of travel reflected the soft undercurrent of anxiety. Radio broadcasts, once solely entertainment, carried warnings disguised as news. Commentary, market reports, and national discussions reached living rooms across the country. Listeners absorbed the information gently, almost imperceptibly, awareness spreading through invisible channels, threading communities into shared anticipation. Evening brought reflection. Streetlights glimmered across avenues and sidewalks. Fires warmed homes quietly. Families gathered, discussing days of careful spending, subtle adjustments, and observations. The nation collectively held its breath, patient, persistent, aware that prosperity was a delicate balance, a fragile layer upon which daily life rested. The journalist noted these signs carefully, conversations overheard in cafes, marketplaces, and homes. The gentle shifts in routine, demeanor, and conversation hinted at a larger story, a story of an interconnected nation whose joys and fears traveled quietly along roads, rails, and invisible airwaves. As night deepened, the soft glow of lamps, streetlights, and distant headlights reflected a nation adjusting. Life continued steadily. Work persisted, communities connected. Yet a subtle tension lingered, a quiet, persistent awareness that the times of abundance were gently faltering, slowly, inevitably. The soft glow of morning spilled gently over towns, cities, and farmlands. Life moved as usual, yet the undercurrent of uncertainty touched each step. The rhythm of daily routines, once confident, now carried a careful deliberation. In urban tenements, mothers planned meals with meticulous care. Every coin spent reflected both necessity and prudence. Children played quietly, learning from the careful calculations of their parents. Factory workers, while attending to machines and tasks, spoke in hushed tones of rumors of layoffs. Even casual laughter carried an undercurrent of vigilance. On rural farms, families rose early as always. Yet decisions, once made with instinct, now carried reflection. Should extra seed be purchased this year? Should travel to town be postponed? Each choice balanced hope with caution. The gentle hum of tractors, the steady roar of the Model T, became symbols not only of progress but also of responsibility, freedom intertwined with care. In small-town America, radios delivered news, music, and commentary. Families gathered to listen, absorbing both entertainment and subtle signals of caution. Conversations over supper reflected an emerging awareness. Neighbors discussed the economy, stock fluctuations, and prices quietly, the community absorbing a collective anxiety shared without alarm. Even the wealthy noticed. Dinners and social events continued, but beneath the glitter, conversation touched the fragility of investments and markets. Decisions about purchases and speculation were measured. Luxury persisted, but it carried a delicate awareness of balance. The invisible threads of concern connected the elite to the rest of society in ways previously unnoticed. Daily routines adapted softly. Street vendors adjusted supplies. Merchants reordered cautiously. Travelers considered routes carefully. Each step, each interaction, each small decision reflected a quiet awareness. The nation's rhythm, though outwardly unchanged, was subtly synchronized by concern, patience guiding adaptation, observation fostering understanding. At train stations, travelers paused more often. Ticket purchases were measured. Conversations between strangers hinted at caution, gentle speculation, and practical foresight. The pulse of mobility, once solely a symbol of freedom, now carried subtle reminders of uncertainty. Evenings brought reflective calm. Lamps glimmered softly in kitchens and parlors. Families shared quiet conversation. Husbands, wives, parents, and children considered the day's small choices. The nation, in its ordinary life, quietly absorbed the idea that the prosperity of the decade, vibrant and seemingly limitless, required care, vigilance, patience. The journalist noted these subtle shifts, the soft glance at ledgers, the quiet discussion over dinner, the measured pace of travel. The country's heartbeat, ever present, carried both continuity and change. A delicate awareness wove through daily life, shaping behavior, thought, and expectation. Quietly, softly, persistently. As night settled across streets, fields, and homes, the soft glow of lights reflected a nation in quiet reflection. Life continued, daily routines endured, and yet each individual, each family, each community moved with a gentle consciousness of uncertainty. Softly, slowly, inevitably. The soft golden light of autumn filtered through streets, towns, and farmlands. The nation moved steadily, yet beneath the familiar rhythm, shadows of uncertainty began to stretch. Subtle signs of tension were felt in every corner of daily life. In city neighborhoods, shopkeepers and workers moved with careful deliberation. Shelves remained stocked, yet sales were no longer brisk. Every transaction carried quiet calculation. Families balanced budgets with added care. The hum of the city persisted, but a soft edge of anxiety lingered. In tenement apartments, immigrant families whispered softly about wages, rent, and prices. The constant grind of factory work persisted, yet each day brought uncertainty. Workers glanced at notices, talked quietly about rumors of reductions, and felt the weight of an invisible tension. Even children sensed it, the atmosphere carrying a quiet alertness. On rural farms, harvests were measured not only for quantity but for potential risk. Prices for crops fluctuated. Supplies cost more than anticipated. Trips to nearby towns were carefully planned. The Model T, once a symbol of liberation, now bore subtle reminders of the careful choices that defined life in the late 1920s. In small towns, radios carried music and news. Families listened attentively, absorbing market reports, economic commentary, and distant events. The airwaves carried the pulse of the nation, gently influencing perception, subtly shaping awareness. Even leisure carried a quiet note of caution. Conversation between neighbors reflected a collective attentiveness. The stock market, glowing in ticker displays and financial offices, hummed with energy and quiet concern. Investors, from modest to wealthy, watched numbers shift with keen observation. The thrill of gains was shadowed by the soft anxiety of possible loss. Conversations over dinner, at parties, and in offices now included gentle mentions of uncertainty. Even the elite felt a subtle, pervasive tension. Daily routines across the country adapted. Merchants, farmers, and workers moved with careful consideration. Travel, purchases, and spending were measured. Even celebrations carried a gentle awareness of fragility. Life persisted, yet in a quieter, more deliberate rhythm. Train stations and roadways reflected similar subtle shifts. Travelers paused thoughtfully. Goods moved with attentiveness. Communities adjusted. The invisible web of connections stretched, carrying not only prosperity but also the delicate awareness of vulnerability. Evenings brought quiet reflection. Homes glowed softly with lamplight. Families shared meals, discussed news, and considered the future. Children drifted to sleep as parents calculated, anticipated, and gently planned. The pulse of daily life, once confident and untroubled, now carried a patient vigilance. The journalist observed and recorded these delicate tensions. Conversations, glances, gestures, and movements all spoke of a nation quietly aware that the exuberance of the decade, while remarkable, was balanced on a fine thread, and that even ordinary days could carry hints of coming change, softly, gently, inevitably. As night deepened, the glow of lamps, distant streetlights, and quiet fires reflected a nation at once vibrant and contemplative. Life endured, routines continued, yet beneath the surface, the soft shadow of uncertainty stretched across the landscape, patiently, tirelessly. The soft light of morning stretched over cities, towns, and farmlands. Life moved steadily, yet beneath the familiar rhythm, a subtle tension was palpable. Americans continued their routines, yet each action carried a quiet deliberation. In urban neighborhoods, families adjusted daily life gently. Meals were planned with care. Clothing mended instead of replaced. Children learned to savor small pleasures. Even ordinary chores carried an added attentiveness, a quiet mindfulness of the resources at hand. Shopkeepers observed the soft change in customers' habits. Fewer extravagant purchases, slower browsing, careful calculation. Yet life persisted. The rhythm of trade, commerce, and community continued with delicate balance, subtle adaptations ensuring continuity. On rural farms, families navigated uncertainty with resilience. Crops were stored carefully, purchases limited to essentials, and travel to town planned meticulously. The Model T, a symbol of freedom and connectivity, now also carried prudence. Each journey reflected thought, planning, and awareness of fragile circumstances. Schools and small-town institutions carried on. Teachers noticed a gentle shift in the energy of students. Discussions at home reflected awareness of economic pressures. Children, sensitive observers, began to understand the need for patience, responsibility, and careful planning. The very act of learning quietly reflected preparation for an uncertain future. Even the wealthy, accustomed to privilege, adapted subtly. Conversations at dinner or in drawing rooms touched upon prudence, investment, and the delicate balance of abundance. Social events continued, yet the exuberance of the earlier decade now carried a muted undertone. Luxury persisted, softened by awareness of impermanence. Communication remained vital. Radio broadcasts, newspapers, and letters threaded communities together. Information spread quickly, offering guidance, advice, and a gentle reminder of interconnectedness. Families absorbed these signals quietly, shaping decisions without alarm, but with attentive care. Transportation, the arteries of connection, continued steadily. Trains moved, cars traveled along roads, and airplanes crossed the skies. Each mode of travel carried not just movement, but awareness. Travelers adjusted itineraries, schedules, and choices with subtle caution. Even ordinary journeys reflected adaptation to a nation quietly bracing for change. Evening arrived with gentle calm. Lamps glimmered in windows. Families shared meals, discussed the day, and planned for tomorrow. The soft hum of everyday life carried resilience. A nation quietly preparing, adjusting, and enduring, ensuring continuity despite underlying strain. The journalist observed these soft patterns, the quiet adaptation of communities, families, and institutions. Subtle resilience threaded through each life. Patience, planning, and reflection became the nation's quiet response to mounting uncertainty. As night deepened, the soft glow of streetlights, fires, and lamplight reflected the enduring spirit of a people quietly adjusting. Daily life continued, gentle and persistent. The nation's rhythm, though altered, endured patiently, softly, endlessly. The late autumn sun cast long, soft shadows across towns, cities, and farmlands. The nation moved quietly through familiar routines, yet beneath the surface, the air carried a subtle tension, whispers of change, gentle but persistent. In urban tenements, immigrant families completed daily chores with care. Meals were prepared thoughtfully, coins spent deliberately. Children played quietly, unaware of the larger forces at work. Parents discussed work, rent, and prices with quiet concern. Life continued, but each step felt measured, deliberate, intentional. On rural farms, the fields glimmered under the soft light of late afternoon. Crops were stored with careful planning, supplies calculated precisely, trips to markets considered thoughtfully. The hum of the Model T, once purely a symbol of freedom, now accompanied caution. Travel, once a spontaneous delight, now carried awareness of fragility. In small towns, radios and newspapers transmitted news, market fluctuations, and economic discussion. Families gathered to listen, absorbing information softly. The day's conversations reflected a growing understanding, the rhythms of daily life now threaded with cautious foresight. Even leisure carried a gentle undercurrent of attentiveness. Among the wealthy, elegant parties and dinner gatherings continued, yet conversations touched stocks, investments, and speculation. Laughter mingled with contemplation. Luxury endured, but beneath it lay a quiet recognition that prosperity was delicate, an awareness shared across class lines, subtle, pervasive, inevitable. The journalist, traveling patiently across the nation, noted these patterns in cities, towns, and farms, in parlors, kitchens, and offices. Observing families, workers, and elites alike, the country, vast and vibrant, now carried a quiet synchrony of anticipation. Each individual, unknowingly, was connected through shared awareness of fragility. Transportation and communication continued to weave the nation together. Trains moved steadily, cars traveled measured routes, airplanes traced arcs above. Radio voices hummed softly, newspapers informed patiently. The interconnectedness of the nation was now both a source of strength and a channel for the subtle spread of anxiety. Evening deepened into night. Lamps, fires, and streetlights glimmered across the landscape. Families reflected on the day, planning gently for tomorrow. The rhythm of life continued, soft and patient, yet a quiet collective pause hung in the air. The nation sensed, without fully seeing, the precipice approaching. Across every street, field, and avenue, in every home, tenement, farm, and mansion, Americans, in their routines, conversations, and choices, carried a gentle awareness that the decade's exuberance, while remarkable, had drawn a delicate line, the unseen tension waiting quietly to unfold. As night embraced the nation, the glow of lights reflected continuity and calm, yet beneath this serenity lay the foreshadowing of profound change. The Great Depression, though not yet fully visible, hovered softly on the horizon, a shadow felt in anticipation, quiet, patient, inevitable. Life continued. Families slept. The hum of machines, the distant whistle of trains, and the faint rustle of leaves marked the passing of the final days of a decade. A nation, connected and intertwined, rested gently, unaware yet subtly braced for the trials soon to arrive. Softly, slowly, endlessly, the crisp autumn air settled softly over towns, cities, and farmlands. October 1929 arrived with a quiet beauty. Golden leaves drifted along streets and fields. Yet beneath this calm, the nation felt subtle tremors, a gentle unease in the rhythms of daily life. In urban tenements, immigrant families moved through their routines with careful deliberation. The markets whispered softly of change. Workers noticed subtle slowdowns in factory orders. Conversations in narrow corridors, over shared meals, carried a quiet attentiveness. Each coin spent reflected care, each gesture of work measured. Survival, ever present, required vigilance. On rural farms, families observed the shifting currents of trade and prices. Crops sold for slightly less than anticipated. Supplies cost more than expected. The hum of the Model T echoed across dusty roads. Travel to markets carried cautious planning. Every decision, even routine ones, carried an added weight of awareness. The future uncertain, yet gently anticipated. Small-town households gathered around radios. Soft voices carried news of distant markets, financial discussions, and rumors of change. Families listened quietly, absorbing information without panic. Conversations followed, gentle and reflective. Neighbors shared thoughts and questions. The air was filled with calm vigilance, an awareness threading communities together. In the wealthy districts, elegant homes and lavish parties continued, yet the atmosphere carried subtle tension. Stock prices fluctuated. Conversations at dinner tables and cocktail gatherings touched speculation, potential losses, and the delicacy of prosperity. Luxury endured, but beneath it lay a quiet understanding, an unspoken awareness that the comfort of the decade was increasingly fragile. The journalist, traveling steadily across the country, observed these early signs. In offices, markets, parlors, and homes, the subtle patterns of caution were evident. The interconnectedness of America allowed even distant news to reach every corner, a soft, quiet ripple of awareness spreading gently through cities, towns, and farms. Even daily life, the familiar hum of routine, reflected these changes. Shopkeepers counted coins with care. Farmers adjusted plans and supplies. Families measured consumption, balanced budgets, and prepared gently for unforeseen shifts. Each small act carried a whisper of foresight, patience, and adaptation. Evening descended quietly. Lamps glimmered in homes, fires flickered softly, and streetlights cast gentle pools of light. Families gathered, shared meals, and reflected on the day. Conversations touched planning, prudence, and the subtle anticipation of challenges ahead. Children slept peacefully, unaware of the economic undercurrents flowing softly through their world. The pulse of the nation, calm yet perceptive, moved steadily. The stock ticker continued its hum. The rhythm of trains and automobiles threaded the land, and radios carried distant voices. Life continued with gentle resilience, yet the first shadows of the Great Depression were quietly stretching across the landscape, soft, patient, inevitable. As night deepened, the glow of lamps, fires, and distant lights reflected a nation on the cusp of change. The decade of prosperity, exuberance, and innovation approached its quiet, uncertain threshold. A nation paused, softly aware, as the gentle unfolding of history prepared to write a new chapter. Slowly, endlessly, October days stretched slowly over cities, towns, and farmlands. The crisp air carried the faint rustle of leaves, the hum of daily life, and now, the gentle tremors of economic change. The nation moved forward in familiar rhythms, yet beneath the surface, ripples of uncertainty spread quietly. In the crowded tenements of New York, immigrant families noticed subtle changes in work. Factory orders slowed. Supervisors whispered hints of layoffs. Each shift carried a weight heavier than before. Families discussed bills, groceries, and rents with attentive care. Every purchase measured, every coin counted. The hum of daily survival continued, but with a careful, conscious edge. On rural farms, autumn brought both harvest and reflection. Crops were gathered with precision, yet prices fell slightly. Loans and debts weighed on families' minds. Travel to nearby towns required careful planning. The Model T, once a symbol of freedom and opportunity, now served as a tool of prudence. Journeys were made with foresight, every mile calculated, every purchase considered. Life continued steadily, but gently tempered by awareness. Small towns, illuminated by the glow of lamplight and radios, carried the soft pulse of information. Families gathered to listen. Markets, distant news, and financial reports trickled in with calm persistence. Discussions at the dinner table became reflective. Neighbors spoke softly of prices, speculation, and what the future might hold. The rhythm of ordinary life intertwined with the awareness of subtle change. Among the wealthy, elegant parlors and grand dining rooms remained bright with light and conversation. Yet the flicker of concern was evident in soft glances at stock reports. Investments, once assumed secure, now carried a gentle tension. Conversations, though polite and measured, touched the fragility of fortune. Even luxury, vibrant and glittering, bore an undercurrent of careful attention. Transportation, the arteries of movement, reflected subtle shifts. Trains ran steadily, automobiles traveled planned routes, and airplanes traced quiet arcs across the sky. Each journey carried more careful consideration. Travel, once spontaneous and liberating, now bore a soft note of prudence. Communities, though interconnected, adjusted in small, thoughtful ways. The journalist observed patiently, noting patterns in offices, markets, parlor rooms, and farms. Conversations carried hints of anxiety. Glances, gestures, and pauses spoke of uncertainty. The invisible threads of communication wove the nation together, spreading awareness gently. The first ripples of the crash, subtle yet persistent, touched every corner of daily life. Evenings brought calm reflection. Families lit lamps, shared meals, and spoke in quiet tones. Parents considered tomorrow's needs. Children drifted to sleep under blankets of gentle warmth. The rhythm of life endured, yet beneath its continuity flowed the soft, undeniable reality of change. Across America, from tenements to farms, from small towns to lavish estates, the nation sensed the unfolding of something significant. The prosperity of the decade, though still visible, now carried the delicate weight of fragility. Soft, patient, and inescapable, history's next chapter prepared quietly to unfold. As night embraced the landscape, lamps glimmered, fires flickered, and distant streetlights shone gently. The pulse of a nation, calm yet aware, continued its quiet beat. Americans, moving through their routines, whispered with themselves and their families, softly, slowly, inevitably. The days of mid-October 1929 unfolded with quiet urgency. A soft, restless energy drifted through streets, towns, and farmlands. Life moved in familiar patterns, yet the rhythm carried a gentle tension, the first stirrings of an unseen storm. In the bustling tenements of New York City, immigrant families went about their routines with careful attention. Factory machines continued their steady hum, but workers noticed shorter hours, hesitant foremen, and whispered concerns. Mothers counted coins, arranged meals thoughtfully, and mended clothing with patience and skill. Children sensed the subtle anxiety in conversations, learning the careful balance between hope and caution. On rural farms, families rose with the sun, tending fields with steady hands. Yet the harvest brought both satisfaction and worry. Prices were slightly lower than expected, supplies slightly higher than usual. The Model T remained a faithful companion, ferrying goods and family members, yet each trip carried an unspoken question. Should we travel farther? By now, wait? Every decision was now layered with careful reflection. In small towns, radios continued to whisper news and music into living rooms. Families huddled to listen, absorbing market updates and distant rumors. Conversations around dinner tables carried cautious reflections. The rhythm of ordinary life was now threaded with attentiveness and deliberation. Neighbors discussed subtle changes in prices, potential layoffs, and the slow shifting of circumstances. Even routine walks and errands were imbued with thoughtful consideration. Among the wealthy, elegant homes and glittering social gatherings still shone. Yet beneath the polished surface, subtle tensions grew. Discussions at parties occasionally drifted to the fragility of investments. Stock fluctuations were noted with careful eyes. Conversations balanced optimism with cautious reflection. Even amidst abundance, the soft awareness of vulnerability began to settle. Transportation arteries continued to hum, yet quietly adapted. Trains, automobiles, and airplanes carried people and goods with measured care. Journeys were carefully planned. Merchants, travelers, and commuters all moved with a gentle mindfulness. The physical interconnectedness of America now mirrored the emotional interconnectedness of its people, each sensitive to the soft tremors of uncertainty. The journalist, moving steadily across the nation, recorded these subtle currents. Conversations, gestures, pauses, and glances spoke volumes. Offices, markets, parlors, and kitchens all reflected the early human impact of economic shifts. Awareness spread silently, touching every life, from laborers to farmers, from small-town citizens to the wealthy elite. Evening brought the comforting glow of home. Lamps and fires provided warmth and calm. Families shared quiet meals and gentle conversation. Parents planned carefully for tomorrow. Children drifted to sleep with soft blankets and a sense of calm security, shielded from the weight of adult concern. Life moved forward, steady and resilient, yet beneath it, tension hummed softly. Across the nation, the pulse of daily life reflected patience, adjustment, and quiet awareness. The first shadows of the Great Depression stretched ever so gently across streets, fields, and homes. Life continued, soft, measured, and deliberate. Americans adapted, prepared, and endured softly, slowly, inevitably. As night deepened, lamplight and streetlights shimmered across the landscape. Fires flickered in hearths. The rhythm of the nation, both calm and aware, persisted. The chapter of prosperity quietly gave way to the prelude of hardship, softly, endlessly. The final week of October 1929 arrived with a quiet, almost imperceptible intensity. The autumn air remained crisp and golden, yet beneath the gentle beauty, tension threaded every corner of the nation. Streets, towns, and farmlands moved in their familiar rhythms. Yet each step, each gesture, each conversation carried subtle weight. In the tenements of New York, families continued their routines with careful mindfulness. Mothers measured coins and prepared modest meals. Children played quietly, absorbing the cautious energy that permeated homes. Workers moved through factory floors with steady hands, yet every glance toward supervisors carried unspoken concern. The soft murmur of conversations reflected both hope and unease. On rural farms, harvests progressed with care. Fields were cleared, crops stored, and supplies rationed thoughtfully. The Model T ferried goods and family members with steady reliability. Each journey carried the quiet deliberation of necessity. Choices about selling crops or buying supplies were measured, with careful consideration for the uncertain days ahead. Even the rhythm of chores, from milking cows to repairing fences, carried a quiet consciousness of fragility. Small-town households gathered each evening to listen to radios, sharing news, music, and soft commentary. Families discussed fluctuations in prices, whispers of layoffs, and subtle signs of financial strain. Neighbors exchanged observations quietly. Daily routines, once entirely predictable, now bore an extra layer of attentive awareness. Even leisure activities, walks, and visits were undertaken with gentle care and mindfulness. Among the wealthy, polished parlors and gleaming mansions carried both elegance and a soft tension. Investment reports were read with careful eyes. Conversations balanced optimism with cautious reflection. Parties continued, yet laughter mingled with observation and consideration. Even abundance, long seen as a buffer against worry, now carried the soft awareness of vulnerability. Transportation and commerce continued, yet in gentle adaptation. Trains, cars, and airplanes maintained their schedules. Merchants, travelers, and commuters moved with deliberate attention. The interconnectedness of the nation allowed every subtle shift to ripple across cities, towns, and farms. The pulse of movement mirrored the emotional rhythm of the people, careful, attentive, and quietly watchful. The journalist observed patiently, moving through offices, markets, kitchens, and parlor rooms. Subtle changes were recorded, glances, gestures, and pauses revealed much. Awareness stretched across social strata, binding the nation in a shared sense of delicate anticipation. Every life, from the laborer to the elite, was gently aligned with the approaching moment. Evenings were filled with soft reflections. Lamps glimmered, fires flickered, and families gathered for dinner. Conversations touched future plans, prudent actions, and cautious hope. Children slept under the warmth of soft blankets, shielded from the worries of adults. Life continued with steady, deliberate rhythm. Yet beneath it, tension hummed softly. Across America, from crowded city streets to open farmland, from small towns to opulent estates, the first shadows of a profound economic shift stretched gently. Life continued, measured, careful, and enduring. Americans adapted, observed, and subtly prepared, softly, patiently, inevitably. As night enveloped the nation, lamplight shimmered, fires glowed, and streetlights flickered softly. The rhythm of daily life, calm yet aware, persisted. The final days before the crash carried a quiet, pervasive anticipation, a nation poised at the threshold of profound change, slowly, endlessly. The morning of Thursday, October 24, 1929, dawned quietly over cities, towns, and farmlands. Golden light filtered through windows, reflected softly on streets, and danced along fields. Yet beneath the calm, a nervous energy began to ripple through the nation. A subtle tremor in the rhythm of daily life. In New York tenements, families rose with their usual routines. Breakfasts were prepared with gentle care. Children played softly. Workers moved through factory floors with steady hands. And yet, whispers traveled through corridors, through lunchrooms, through the soft murmur of streets. Orders slowed, rumors of layoffs drifted through conversations, and a quiet tension settled into every home. On rural farms, families noticed subtle shifts. Prices fluctuated on market reports. Farmers considered the best timing to sell crops, each choice carrying delicate consequence. The Model T carried goods and people along roads more thoughtfully than ever. Chores were performed with steady hands, yet the air carried a faint, almost imperceptible edge. A soft tension threaded the fields and barns. In small towns, radios broadcasted news with calm voices. Families huddled to listen, absorbing the reports of market activity. Conversations at dinner tables became reflective, gentle assessments of risk and prudence. Even friendly walks and neighborhood visits were undertaken with cautious awareness. Life continued, yet each action bore the weight of uncertainty. Among the wealthy, elegant parlors shimmered with light. Stock prices were watched with attentive eyes. Conversations that morning carried a quieter tone. Investment fluctuations sparked subtle concern. Parties continued, yet laughter mingled with the soft acknowledgement of fragile security. Even luxury carried a muted awareness that fortune could be fleeting. Transportation, the veins of the nation, reflected the soft currents of concern. Trains, automobiles, and planes moved steadily, yet travelers considered schedules and plans with careful deliberation. Goods were shipped with attentive thought. The interconnectedness of the country now mirrored the interwoven anxieties of its people, a delicate network quietly bracing for change. The journalist, moving through offices, markets, and homes, observed the subtle tremors. Pauses in conversation, careful glances, quiet calculations. Even small actions carried meaning. Awareness spread silently across the nation, touching workers, farmers, families, and the elite alike. Every life, connected through the pulse of commerce and communication, felt the first tremors of a profound shift. Evening arrived with a soft glow. Lamps, fires, and streetlights painted a gentle calm across the landscape. Families shared quiet meals. Parents reflected on the day, considering the subtle signals of change. Children drifted to sleep under warm blankets, safe in the rhythm of daily life. Life continued, steady yet tinged with a soft awareness of uncertainty. Across America, from bustling city streets to quiet rural roads, from small towns to grand estates, the first tremors of the crash began to ripple through hearts and homes. The rhythm of the nation persisted, measured, careful, enduring. Americans adapted, observed, and quietly prepared, softly, patiently, inevitably. As night settled, lamplight shimmered, fires glowed, and streetlights flickered. The pulse of the nation, calm yet aware, continued. Black Thursday had arrived, a subtle prelude to the deeper tremors to come, softly, slowly, endlessly. The night following Black Thursday settled gently over cities, towns, and farmlands. Lamps glimmered in windows, fires flickered softly in hearths, and streetlights painted pools of golden calm along quiet streets. Yet beneath the serene exterior, a gentle ripple of unease lingered, a subtle sense of awareness spreading through every home. In the crowded tenements of New York, families reflected on the day's events quietly. Mothers measured food and coins with careful precision. Children slept peacefully, cocooned in soft blankets, unaware of the undercurrents of tension around them. Fathers and workers discussed the subtle shifts in factory orders and wages. Each conversation was measured, deliberate, carrying a quiet vigilance. Life continued, gentle and steady, yet threaded with awareness. On rural farms, families rose early to tend to animals and fields. The harvest, gathered with care, was now considered alongside market uncertainty. The Model T carried goods to town with deliberate caution. Every mile, every decision, every transaction was imbued with soft reflection. Families planned for tomorrow, saved, rationed, and considered. Even chores, from mending fences to feeding livestock, were approached with gentle attentiveness. Small-town households listened quietly to radios, absorbing updates with calm vigilance. Conversations around the dinner table reflected thoughtful consideration. Neighbors exchanged observations softly, quietly measuring the shifting patterns of trade, supply, and demand. Life continued, enriched by community and awareness, each interaction carrying a subtle, reflective mindfulness. Among the wealthy, elegant parlors and drawing rooms glimmered with lamplight. Stock reports were studied carefully, whispered conversations moved between caution and hope. Even luxury, usually a shield from concern, now carried a soft awareness of fragility. Parties continued in measured grace, laughter intertwined with quiet consideration. The rhythm of abundance persisted, yet tempered by attentive awareness. Transportation and commerce maintained their steady pulse. Trains moved along tracks, automobiles traced familiar roads, airplanes traced arcs above the nation. Each journey carried quiet mindfulness. The interconnectedness of the country now mirrored the delicate balance of emotional awareness. Every movement reflected thought, care, and subtle adjustment to emerging uncertainty. The journalist observed calmly, noting the subtleties across cities, towns, and farms. Pauses, glances, conversations, and gestures revealed the quiet spread of awareness. Every corner of daily life reflected cautious reflection. Each citizen, from laborer to elite, shared the silent recognition of delicate change. Evening deepened into night. Lamps glimmered softly, fires crackled with gentle warmth. Families gathered, shared meals, and discussed plans with careful thought. Children drifted to sleep under comforting blankets, shielded from the weight of adult concern. Life persisted, gentle, patient, and resilient, yet underlined by subtle vigilance. Across America, the rhythm of daily life continued, measured, steady, enduring. Black Thursday had passed. The first tremor had rippled through homes, workplaces, and parlor rooms. Awareness threaded communities together, softly, patiently, inevitably. As the nation rested, lamplight shimmered, fires glowed, and streetlights reflected gently on quiet streets. The pulse of America, calm yet perceptive, persisted. Families, neighbors, and communities carried the first soft lessons of uncertainty. Each breath, each movement, each thought a quiet reflection. The nation poised at the threshold of deeper trials, softly, slowly, endlessly. As our journey through the 1920s comes to a gentle close, we rest for a moment in reflection. The decade was one of light and shadow, of jazz and prohibition, of prosperity and precarity. The rhythms of daily life, across crowded tenements, open farmlands, bustling towns, and glittering mansions, reveal a nation alive with energy, hope, and quiet uncertainty. We've witnessed the resilience of families, the cautious optimism of farmers, the cultural awakening in towns, and the shimmering luxury of the elite. We've felt the hum of progress, the soft pulse of communication, and the subtle tension that would soon unfold into the Great Depression. All of these moments, small and large, ordinary and extraordinary, have shaped the story of America in ways both gentle and profound. If this quiet journey through time has brought you a moment of calm, curiosity, or reflection, consider leaving a like. It helps the story reach others who seek gentle history and thoughtful storytelling. And if you have reflections, thoughts, or questions about the 1920s, we'd love for you to share them in the comments, softly, thoughtfully, gently. Thank you for joining us on this journey, for listening, imagining, and traveling back through a nation on the cusp of change. The decade may have ended, but the echoes of its rhythm remain in the stories, the streets, and the hearts of those who lived through it. Sleep well, and let the gentle rhythms of history carry you into dreams, softly, slowly, endlessly.